There is something nobody really prepares you for. The specific feeling of wondering about someone without being able to ask. Not because you don't know them, not because the relationship was unclear, but because something shifted, or ended, or simply paused. And now there is a space where they used to be. And you find yourself doing something you didn't plan to do. Thinking about them, more than you expected, more than feels comfortable, more than you'd ever admit out loud. And somewhere underneath all of that thinking, a question keeps surfacing. Do they think about me too? You don't say it to anyone, because saying it feels like too much, like it reveals something you're not ready to reveal, like it gives the whole thing a weight you're not sure you want it to have. So you stay quiet, and you watch instead. You look for small things, the kind of things that wouldn't mean anything to anyone else, but somehow mean everything to you. Because you know this person, and you know the difference between something casual and something that isn't. I've spent a long time paying attention to how people behave when they miss someone, and here's what I've come to believe. Most people never say it directly, not because they don't feel it, because saying it out loud means standing at the edge of something uncertain, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. So they carry it quietly, in small moments, in patterns that look like nothing on the surface, until you know what you're looking at, and once you do, they're almost impossible to miss. The first sign, they reach out without a real reason. You've received this message before. Something arrives, not urgent, not necessary, just there. A memory they wanted to share, something they saw that reminded you of you, a question about something you mentioned so long ago you'd almost forgotten you said it, or sometimes just a simple hello that didn't quite have anywhere to go. And your first instinct is to think nothing of it. People send messages all the time. That's true. But here's what's also true. People who have genuinely moved on, people whose attention has found somewhere else to go, don't usually reach out for no real reason. They don't need to. Their days are full of other things, other people, other thoughts. When someone keeps finding their way back to you without quite being able to justify why, it's rarely because they had nothing better to do. It's because somewhere in the middle of their day, you appeared in their thoughts. And the message was the only way they could act on that without having to admit it. The reason they give you is never quite the real reason. The real reason is that they wanted to hear from you, and this was the only way they knew how to make that happen without saying so. The second sign, they remember things you forgot you ever said. This one arrives without warning. You're talking about something ordinary, something completely unrelated, and they mention something, a small detail, something you said once in passing, a preference you threw into a conversation without thinking, a plan you mentioned that never happened, a worry you shared that you barely remember sharing, and you stop, because you hadn't thought about that in months. You'd completely forgotten you ever said it, but they hadn't. They held on to it, and I think that says something important, because memory isn't random. We don't remember everything. We remember what stayed with us. And things stay with us because they're attached to something that mattered. That conversation didn't end when you stopped talking. It kept going somewhere inside them. They thought about it again later, maybe more than once, maybe more than they'd be comfortable admitting. You cannot hold on to something you haven't revisited, and people don't revisit things that don't matter to them. The third sign, they keep ending up in places connected to you. Nobody talks about this one enough, but it's one of the most honest signs there is, because it isn't something they say, it's something they do, often without fully understanding why. They go back to the coffee shop you used to sit in together. They find themselves listening to a song that belongs to a specific memory. They visit somewhere you once talked about going. They order the thing you always used to recommend. From the outside, none of that looks significant, but underneath it, there's a pattern. When we're genuinely over something, we move forward. We build new associations. We find new places. We stop returning to the ones that carry old feelings. But when someone keeps circling back, keeps landing in spaces that have your fingerprints on them, It's usually because something hasn't finished settling yet. Not because they're stuck, but because some things take longer than we expect them to. And while they're taking that time, people find themselves in familiar places, not always consciously, but not entirely by accident either.
The fourth sign. Your name keeps coming up in conversations you weren't part of. You hear about this one secondhand. A mutual friend mentions it casually, or someone tells you in passing that you came up recently. Not dramatically, not in a way that was meant to be reported back to you. Just your name, in a conversation where it didn't need to appear, and yet it did. I've always found that difficult to fake, because we don't talk about people we haven't been thinking about. We talk about what's mentally active, what's taking up space, what we're carrying around with us even when we're not fully aware of it. If someone keeps mentioning you in rooms you weren't in, you've been on their mind more than they've let on. Not occasionally, regularly enough that your name found its way into conversations it had no obvious business being in. That's not something people do on purpose. It's something that happens when a person is living in your thoughts, and the only way to release a little of that pressure is to say their name out loud, even when there's no particular reason to. The fifth sign. They reply faster than they need to. Pay attention to this one, because it's easy to dismiss. You send something, nothing urgent, nothing that required an immediate response, and the reply comes back quickly, almost immediately, faster than the message deserved, faster than someone who is going about their day unbothered would typically respond. And here is what that usually means. When someone genuinely doesn't think about you between conversations, your message is one of many. It sits in the list. It gets answered when there's time. There's no particular urgency, no pull. But when someone has been thinking about you, when your name has been somewhere in the background of their day, seeing it appear on their screen does something different. It doesn't sit at the bottom of the list. It rises without them deciding to move it. And the reply that comes back quickly isn't always because they had nothing else going on. Sometimes it's because for a moment, your name made everything else feel slightly less important. The sixth sign. They know things about your life they shouldn't quite know. This one requires paying attention to catch, because it doesn't announce itself. It slips out quietly. You mention something in passing, or you post something somewhere, or a mutual friend says something in conversation, and later they reference it, casually, like it's nothing, like they just happen to know. But something about it tells you they've been paying more attention than they've let on. That's not something people do about someone they've genuinely moved past. When we're truly indifferent to someone, we don't track the small updates. We're not following the details of their life. We have other things to follow. But when someone keeps appearing in our awareness, when we keep finding ourselves curious about how they're doing, we pay attention without quite meaning to. And eventually, that attention reveals itself. In a passing comment, in a detail they shouldn't quite have had, in a question that gives away how closely they've been watching. The seventh sign. Something about them is different when you're around. This is the hardest one to explain and probably the most honest, because everything else on this list can be explained away. The message was casual, the memory was just good recall, the coffee shop was convenient. But this one is harder to dismiss because you can control what you say, you can control what you do, you can decide not to reach out, you can decide not to bring someone's name up, but you cannot fully control how you are. And when someone has been missing you, when you've been taking real space in their thoughts, something changes when they're actually in front of you. Their energy shifts, not dramatically, just enough. They become slightly more aware of themselves, more deliberate, more present than they are with other people. They laugh a little differently. They pay attention in a way that feels more careful. And sometimes, right at the edge of a moment, you catch something in the way they look at you. Something that lasts a second too long. something that tells you without words that you being there means something different to them than most people being there does. That's not something you can perform. It either happens or it doesn't, and when it does, it's usually the clearest sign of all. Here is what I keep coming back to. Missing someone is one of the most ordinary human experiences there is. Almost everyone has felt it. The specific weight of thinking about someone who doesn't know you're thinking about them. The way a song can bring someone back completely. The way a place can make them feel suddenly present. The way you can be in the middle of a completely unrelated day and they appear, without warning, without invitation, just there. And most people carry that quietly. Not because they don't want to say something, but because saying it means crossing a line they're not sure about. It means admitting something. It means risking something. And risk is uncomfortable. So they hold it instead. In the messages they almost send. In the names they almost say. In the places they somehow keep returning to. In the details they shouldn't still remember. And meanwhile, the person they're missing goes about their life, wondering, asking the same question they are, not realizing that the answer has been showing up in small moments all along. I don't know who you're thinking about right now, but if someone in your life has been showing you these signs, maybe the wondering doesn't have to stay quiet on both sides, because some things are worth saying out loud, even when it's uncertain, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't know exactly how it will land, because silence has a way of becoming permanent, and some people are worth the risk of a single honest moment. So I'm curious, have you ever missed someone so quietly that they had absolutely no idea? I think more people would say yes to that than would ever admit it in a comment, but if you want to share, I'd really like to hear.